The conference itself, great. It was well organized. I will say, and
Yeah.
I have been wanting to say this and
Of
haven't because
course.
I feel bad, but I'm going to say
Yeah.
it.
Welcome to This Week in No Code. This is David Pal, and I'm JJ Engler. In today's episode, we have a lot to unpack. In our news section, we're going to dive into Softr AI, Xano's Fundraise, the last week's No Code Summit, even bring on a special guest for that, and then talk about a major acquisition in the no code space with WeLoveNoCode being acquired by TopTail. So we have another jam-packed show for you and super excited to break it down, starting with my co-host David Pal on the news for this week.
Last week, we saw at the No Code Summit and yesterday on Product Hunt, Softr launched their Softr AI system. From prompt to app, prompt to production, whatever you want to call it, this is pretty cool of a system. I actually put in some ideas that and it's really interesting to see how quickly this spins out a starter prototype. I wouldn't say that this gets you to like a fully ready app. You still have to do some work, but from an agency perspective, this is a really interesting tool to be able to build like proof of concept kind of functionality in minutes. Now, I think what they're doing with this generator, so you type in a prompt you saw on the screen, they're limiting you to about 200 characters. You obviously can't describe everything in your application in 200 characters, but I imagine that over time, as that prompt space gets bigger, you can add more and more details about what you think your app needs. And so we're going to see that this is just the beginning of creation using AI. You're going to be able to do a heck of a lot faster than you could do by yourself. Even with templates, I feel like this is getting you a bit closer to a real product. What
Yeah,
do you think?
I think it's super exciting. Software has been doing a great job at making no code accessible, right? When people say, how should I get started with no code? I either recommend Glide or Software because within 2 to 3 hours, like you can actually build something. And now with their AI solution, it's literally like minutes. You build it with this prompt, you customize the colors, all that kind of stuff. And then you go right into actually having this application. And then you can start to play around with it in so many awesome ways. And so, I really like what they are doing. Here you could see me within the application that I built from AI in the last 20 seconds. You could see the
Mhm.
pages that they built for us. You could see the themes that we have access to by easily changing all the colors and the fonts and all that kind of stuff. One of the cool things right away is you have a built-in database. Well, you don't have a built-in database with Software. You have databases such as Google Sheets and or Airtable, but they do give you access with these prompts to like a user that you can log in as and or quickly connect to a data source. So in this situation, I'm connecting to a Google Sheet and I didn't have any data in this Google Sheet. They put all this data in my Google Sheet and fed this database for me. So me getting up and running now with these users is even faster, right, than I would be if I had to fill this database. And so then this gives me the ability to then preview my applications and to run as certain users in that application of a non-logged in user or this user. And running as a user is just one of the things that really hit home for me with Bubble and just being able to authenticate as that user, see what is going on if they're experiencing a problem or anything like that. And so the fact that software also makes this so easy and comes with these pre-built databases and structures and all that stuff in place is really decreasing the learning curve. And I think there's just unlimited ways that they could take this. And I'm super excited because now I could start using Software and Glide as more of beginner tutorials and educational examples to get people to understand what is an authenticated user, what is a database structure with your tables and your fields.
Yeah, I like your take on the beginner use case as you're learning a no code tool. We talked a few times now about how some of these systems are kind of locked down, right? You can't really have too many degrees of freedom, which helps a new user learn how to use a system because you don't have, you're not trying to manage design and database structure and workflows a lot of that is already handled for you. And when you're putting in a prompt that you understand, right? If you're building for yourself, you really understand this product
Yeah.
that you're trying to build and seeing it come to life, things will start clicking a lot faster. And in that kind of guardrail environment of software where you don't have to worry about so much to get going, I think a lot of things are going to click for a lot of different people.
Yeah, I think you actually hit a couple points that I really love, the guardrails and then also the design, like the pre-built design. Like software includes a lot of pre-built design components and you can't actually modify them too much, but they include so many different samples and templates of like all the most popular things that when you're learning no code for the first time, you also need to learn design and user experience and all these things. And by software providing you with all these things, it decreases the need to learn all those additional things and just focuses on building this one thing for the first time, and they kind of take care of the rest. So you are sacrificing customization a little bit because of such, and that's where like Bubble would come in because you can customize everything from the pixel. But that also requires you to learn UI and learn UX and all those things, which at
Yeah.
once in the beginning is a lot for a user. And with all
Yeah.
these no code platforms figuring out how do we get people started as soon as possible, seems like this could be the way to go.
Yeah. I like this. This is pretty great.
Yeah, I was really excited when I saw that, and I'm super excited to keep exploring it myself. But other than Softr AI, we also got to talk about Xano. So Xano is one of the most powerful no-code backend databases, right? We know Xano from the Bubble world. It's one of those things that connect really well with Bubble. You can spin up a database with really nice APIs and workflows to kind of act as your backend. And Xano is really powerful, really scalable, and they've been growing a really nice community over the last several years. They have good education behind it, good leadership, and they recently announced that they have fundraised even more money with a 10 million Series A, which is honestly really great in this market. Like it's a tough market to raise money, and they have raised more money now at 10 million. I think they might have raised 2 million before, maybe like last year. And so you can only imagine that this is going to give them a lot more resources to continue to build world-class software. And they're already doing things like great deployment, security, interoperability, all that kind of stuff. And they have multiple dev environments. You have collaboration, real time. There's a lot of things that you can do with Xano that you don't have the control in Bubble to do. Like one of the things that I really love in Xano is the way that you can call the data and get the data, only the data that you want back, right? And many other ways. And so Xano is that hybrid between learning code and no code. It's still a no code builder, but it makes you think of, like, you need to think of every single step for that, like, that function that you're creating or that loop that you're creating. Whereas Bubble, it takes all that away and it's just like, here's a loop, but it reduces the control that you have of actually how you're processing this loop, which Xano provides you with. So Xano is a no-code builder, but it gives you the customization as like a full code platform, but it still is a little bit slower to work with because of such, because you're still needing to do more to set something up than that of a Bubble.
Yeah, it seems like, the way I think about Xano is once you have something working and you need a little bit more power, you need a little more speed, and you kind of already have an idea of what it is you need to build, then putting it in Xano makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Xano does lean more towards code than low code in their language, in the way that things are structured, how
Yeah.
things get set up. It is also definitely more powerful from a backend perspective than a bubble. What's really cool about it is as we start seeing more and more of these front end first infrastructures, a tool like Xano is going to be really important as the backend, right? Like, I don't think it always makes sense to use, or there are probably few cases where I would pick Bubble as a backend only over Xano, right? If I had to pick, the best tool for the job, if I wanted to build a Webflow front end and a back end somewhere else, I'd probably pick Xano over Bubble because it's built for that.
Yeah.
And so I think this is really cool. Xano is built by backend engineers for backend engineers, enterprise customers already. They're doing really great things with some really big names that
Top
they've
tier
announced.
security as well.
Yep, security, and I'm really excited for them to see where this goes, and I'm hoping they continue to put out really great content and help, everyone in the no code, low code world really
Yeah.
scale their operations.
So a lot of people have asked me, when do they go to Zano, right? And I have a lot of experience with this. In my previous company, we had a team of 4 Bubble pros, like really good Bubble pros, right? And
Yeah.
we had a system where we had multiple applications that all needed to feed on one central database. And we were like, man, maybe it just makes sense to have Xano as our central database. So we have one authenticated user for everything, right? And so that's what we went and did. We switched away from Bubble database to Xano and did it full time with 4 devs for a month. And we were able to get a lot done, but nowhere near the amount that we could do in Bubble, right? And we hadn't launched our MVP yet, and it was just overkill for that, right? Because we just needed to get the market. We needed
Yeah.
to test things out. We didn't need scale at that point. So in that situation, it's overkill. But in the situation where you are at market, you most likely have found product market fit, and now you have like an operation or two that really needs to scale. Then this is when it could be really great. And matter of fact, I'm gonna put it on the screen. I think last year I worked with Zano's team to do a performance comparison, right? And we went
Oh,
in there and we
right.
were like, okay, comparing Bubble's database to Zano's database, what does this look like, right? And we compared Zano and Bubble at different tiers, and we had several different things. What we kind of found is that Bubble and Zano, when you're only working with like 100 to 1,000 items, Bubble is faster because of the built-in and how it
Mm.
all is, right, in most senses. But once you get to that scale, Xano is significantly faster. And so, a couple examples of this would be if we're talking about Xano at maybe the scale package, and we're talking about Bubble at the production package. If I'm looking to get 100 blog items back, Xano's around 86 seconds or milliseconds, and then Bubble's around 1.7 seconds, right? So it's
Yeah.
comparable. Zano's a little bit faster there, right? But where it starts to get really kind of crazy is, and let me know if I'm reading this the wrong way. I haven't looked at this graph in a second, but when you go to call 100,000 records, right? Zano, the max response time that we're seeing is still around like 700 milliseconds, 600 milliseconds, right? So it's really quite quick. It's still less than a second to get 100,000 items. And at
Yeah.
Bubble, we saw it around 10 seconds to get 100,000 items. And so there's a varying degree,
Yeah.
and it's not a perfect comparison, but you're starting to see Xano really at scale perform much better. And I think one other thing to note is that Bubble is pretty slow when it comes to CRUD, right? And so CRUD meaning create, read, update, and delete. And so calling items, Bubble is pretty good at, but when it comes to like creating items, it gets really, really slow. And so Bubble has this limit where you can create 10,000 things in 3 minutes using the bulk create API, right? So if I were to create 10,000 things in Bubble, it would take me 3 minutes and 20 seconds. If I were to do that in Xano, it would take me 500 milliseconds, half a second, right?
Yeah.
Now, if I were to create 100,000 things in Xano, it'd take me 4 seconds. And in Bubble, it would take me around 30 minutes, right? And so that's kind of where it really pulls away. But truthfully, there's not many times where you need to create 100,000 things in one
Right.
second, right? Yes, the technology is significantly faster at scale, but do you really need that? Most times you don't, but maybe your use case calls for it, and then that's when you call for a specialty tool like Xano.
Yeah. I think that's right. Trying to go fetch 100,000 seconds and loading them into the browser may not ever be a thing you want to do.
Yeah.
That's a lot of data to download.
Yeah,
The client starts lagging a little bit.
yeah,
If you're doing processes on that, they start compounding, right? Like
yeah,
you start seeing these things add up and you want to run lots of processes. You want to, toggle things and check things back around, the data structure definitely matters. We were at Ads on Top, we were doing millions of ad requests a day, which was lots of complex calculations on the fly.
millions?
Yep.
And
And
then
so,
and this was your startup, right? Ads
yep.
on top?
Mhm,
Okay.
exactly. And so there was a lot that we needed to do. And so, like, sometimes things were really highly concurrent, right? We needed lots of things to happen all at once. Even still, we weren't loading hundreds of thousands of things in a second, right? We didn't never even needed that.
Mhm,
So there's definitely a need for it sometimes when you get to super high throughputs. Some performance may not be so important, but it does matter to user experience, right? When you see people talk about when to not use Bubble, and it has a lot to do with the snappiness of the UI, right? If you're trying to compete with linear
mhm,
on a to-do list, um, you need the UI to work really quickly, right? And so you need things to be created super, super fast.
Hmm.
It does matter sometimes on those edges.
Yeah.
MVP level, V1 level, you may not.
You got to get there first. You got to have customers. You got to make it worth it, right? Because it takes a little bit longer, it takes a little bit more money to get there. But if it's right for your business, then fantastic. Before we get into the No Code Summit and bring on a special guest, we have a sponsor this week from NoCodeDevs. We wanted to tell you a little bit about what they're up to because they're also doing a lot of great things for the no code community. So if you're looking to kickstart your no code journey, which you are because you're listening to this podcast, and build businesses online without extensive coding, then you need to explore NoCodeDevs, the ultimate resource for startups, SaaS, and AI driven business creation. You could check out their tool directory for a variety of no code solutions, subscribe to their newsletter for weekly updates and what's happening, similar to how you listen to the podcast, and join a vibrant community of like minded enthusiasts and learn through their YouTube channel. So you can go to nocodevs.com. They offer a lot of free content across the board, and they're doing a great job. I recently met with their founder, Art, and just applaud him for everything that he's doing in the space and giving back to the space. And just wanted to give him a little bit of a shout out on this episode to let him know that we appreciate all that they're doing over at No Code Devs. So with that, let's get into the No Code Summit. And we have a very special guest that we're bringing on, Kelly Claus, who was at the No Code Summit in Paris. Welcome, Kelly. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, boys. How you doing?
Hello.
For those of you who don't know Kelly, she is a renowned bubble developer and designer. But I don't want to give it all away. Kelly, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, yeah, I'm a renowned bubble developer and designer. You got that part
Perfect.
right.
You're perfect.
Yeah. No, I've been bubbling for about 3 years now. I came from sort of web design and branding before that, and did a lot of database management before that. So Bubble kind of is a nice fit for yeah, I was like a Salesforce person.
Wow, I didn't know
Mhm.
that. I thought you
Yeah.
were just a designer.
No, no, I had a whole career before that. Yeah,
Fantastic.
I am older than I look. Yeah, and so, yeah, I came to Bubble a few years ago, and I did the On Deck program and Max Heining's 100 Days of No Code, which sort of, like, jump-started things for me. I didn't know anything about tech. I didn't know anything about I was, like, not interested in a career in tech, but not on my radar at all, and now, I don't know, here I am. It's very weird.
Well, you're doing great. You recently worked full time as a bubble developer for Swapstack, who was
Yeah.
recently acquired. Can you talk to us a little bit about that experience before we get into the summit?
About the acquisition or just working for them?
Whatever you want to say
All of
about
it?
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wrong.
Yeah, fascinating. Because I was not looking for a full-time gig. I was like freelance. I am a freelancer, just like I just am. And Jake
A
Singer,
nomad freelancer.
I know, yeah, that too. Yeah, so like I'm used to freedom, right? Like
Mhm.
I don't like to be planted in one place and tied to anything. It's a wonder I've been with my boyfriend for so long. I don't know how that's happened. But yeah, Jake Singer, who was one of the co-founders of Swapstack, and he's a brilliant bubble developer, just really, really great and a great guy. He approached me and I was like, nah, I don't want a job. Come on, you know. And
You
he
take
just kind
cage
of
the bird. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Or is like, go find someone else. And he just kind of like wooed me, and eventually I took the job, which I think a lot of bubble developers are like me in that they're kind of like, I don't want to call myself entrepreneurial because I don't think that's accurate, but just like free spirits kind of, and like builder, like they want to like build a thing and they're like, they need new, they're like, yeah, I don't know what that word is, but, and so like having a job that you show up to every day and you do stuff for the same person every day is like not quite the personality that I have seen in the bubble world. And so I think that's the one of the biggest challenges right now in the bubble landscape is just
Yeah.
like nobody wants a job, man. And there's all these startups that like need full-time bubble devs and there's just not anyone who wants to do that work.
Yeah.
It it can be a slog and Swapstack was just the best place in the world to work and I still found it really difficult to show up every day.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to say about it beyond that. Like I'm really happy that they sold and like I'm back to freelancing and I'm so happy that I got to work I think one of the things that I took away from the experience is that, like, working alongside someone who's a much better builder than you is like, you just can't you can't imagine how valuable that is. It's
You learn
just so
so much
valuable.
faster.
So much faster,
Yeah.
and you're challenged so much more, and, you wanna, like, show up and, like, not I don't want them to think they're wasting their money on me, you know?
Yeah, it's not just enough to like complete
Yeah,
the task. You're like,
yeah,
yeah, let me do this really well. I want to do it
yeah,
exactly right,
mhm,
not just check the box, move on
yeah,
to the next project. The client that you're working on, you're going to see them tomorrow. You
mhm,
can't just
mhm.
like, all right, great,
Well, and
thanks.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna have to fix the bug
yeah,
that
yeah.
I shipped,
Yeah.
right? Well, and the other thing about it is that was a huge difference for me was,
The
there's lots
production
of people,
environment.
a production environment and
Yeah.
lots of users. Swapstack
Yeah.
had a lot of users and, you can't ship broken stuff. I mean, you can and you do, like
It's a
that's just
different way of building.
yeah, yeah, and it's a different kind of pressure, and when you're building MVPs, which, like, people need people to build MVPs, I'm not sneezing on that, but
Mhm.
it's just a different experience, you know,
Yeah.
and so,
The
like, I'm
pressure
glad I've
isn't
had
there as
both.
much. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a reason why we do it.
yep,
If you want to change the data structure completely, there's no migration necessary. Who cares?
yeah, yeah,
Fine. Just like, great. Yeah, we're just gonna delete this field, delete that field, add this, add some
Yeah.
connections, and
mhm.
fine.
Oh, yeah,
You
the
know?
changes I make on my own apps are just, like, willy-nilly, I'm just like,
Yeah.
"Whatever," and then Swapstack stuff, I was like, "Jake, is it okay if I rename," because, sometimes you rename a field, it can screw up an API, like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
there was so much communication that we had to do. It was a great experience, and I'm very glad it's done.
Yeah. We recently talked about SwapStack as being, an acquisition, a win for the no-code space. I think it's great that they were able to build this on Bubble, and grow a team of Bubble devs, and then exit that. And that kind of leads us to the No-Code Summit. You were there in Paris last week. It looked awesome. I had super FOMO. I'm so jealous. I'm gonna be there next year. But tell us a little bit about it. Like, what was the experience like, and some of the things that really stuck out to you?
Yeah, so fascinating. It was a lot of fun. I go to a fair amount of conferences and, like, I don't know, they're conferences, right? The point of going to a conference for me is like people. You want to meet people, you want to, like, whatever, rub elbows, right? And so I was like, I'm getting back into freelancing. I was like, I'm gonna go and meet some people. And I didn't really anticipate that I would meet bubblers, if that makes
Mm.
sense. I was thinking
Yeah.
like I'd meet clients, but it ended up being like this just incredible fun time with bubblers I've known on Twitter for years. Like
Yeah.
I hung
Yeah.
out with Kieran. Kieran's amazing, and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
James Davenport and
Yeah.
Chad Sakonchik, and just like a ton of met some newer bubblers who are kind of entering the space and looking to like sort of older folks to help them out a little bit and just get, I don't know, advice or whatever. It was so fun. The conference itself, great. It was well organized. I will say, and
Yeah.
I have been wanting to say this and
Of course.
haven't
Of
because
course.
I feel bad, but I'm going to say
Yeah.
there was a conference app, right? And I was like, surely they will have a conference app. Let's see how it is. What
Yeah.
will it be built on? Right? No Code Summit. It was built on Glide, and man, that thing was bad.
Yeah. Was it the performance? Was it the
Yeah,
design?
everything, man,
Yeah.
everything. I mean, yeah, I was really sad
Oh,
for them, for Glide, and I think probably it was like, there's so many it's a huge conference, there's like
yeah.
Yeah.
3,000 people, and all of them were trying to use it at one time. It was just crashing, 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 you couldn't
Oh, rough.
yeah, and it was really bad. I like Glide. I think Glide's
Yeah.
an incredible
Yeah.
tool, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was, like, not a great performance for them, and I think it didn't
They
represent
don't
no
justice
code.
it.
It yeah. Yeah,
And
it
the
didn't
harder
yeah.
critics are
Mm.
there in the room going, I
Well
can't use this now.
well, here is the thing, and
Yeah.
there's only, like, one little screen where it says "Built on Glide," but I saw that screen a few times, and I was like,
I'm sure people
"Oh,
recognized it. Like,
yeah,
if you've
yeah."
built wide apps before,
They kinda
most of
look
them are kinda similar.
Yeah.
mhm.
We're tough critics, but you can't be crashing, you
It
gotta be
wasn't
useful.
usable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
and the
know
Wi-Fi in that space was terrible, so you couldn't even really access
But
it.
that's a known conference problem.
Yeah.
of like
Yeah.
you just getting internet. But like the thing about no code tools, and maybe they'll switch to like a native app Flutter Flow kind of thing next year,
Mhm.
is
Hmm.
like there aren't really offline solutions.
Yeah.
Aren't
Yep.
really good systems that are meant for
You just
what
gotta have
happens on the internet.
Wi-Fi. You gotta really load up your conference with Wi-Fi points.
So
They're
I
just
went
bonkers.
to
Yeah.
Web Summit. I don't know if either of you have ever been to Web Summit.
Mm,
It's a huge
Mhm.
conference. It's like
okay.
40,000 plus in an arena, and they like
Wow.
bring in new cell phone towers.
I don't
True.
think we're gonna
Yeah.
have this problem next week at BubbleCon though, because I don't think they're gonna have an app to
I
show.
don't think so.
So that's not gonna be a problem.
Already talking.
Yeah.
For
Yeah. But
Kelly, are you
okay.
going to BubbleCon?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I'm sad you're not, David, but
Yeah.
happy marriage.
Why couldn't they just plan around my wedding?
I don't know.
Damn it.
I, yeah,
Going back to No Code Summit, it's their second year, and they had a lot of players there. It looked like
Yeah.
that's the place to be if you're in no code, right? Like their
Yeah.
schedule was fantastic. They had great speakers from what I saw. Let me know if otherwise, but tons of vendors, tons of booths, and it's just that's the place. So I feel like they succeeded in that light.
One of the things that I felt about it was it felt very like enterprise people testing it, like going to like see what's up. Like Emmanuel,
Mhm.
co-founder of Bubble, did a fireside chat, and I think like 5 people asked him about enterprise, and he was like, "Guys, you already asked it. Like asked and answered." You know, it was
yeah.
a little bit frustrating because it felt like, I mean, that's just annoying in a room where you're like, let's ask them some other things, let's ask them
Yeah,
about like the developer experience maybe, or,
yeah.
but it
Yeah.
was a bunch of like business owners who wanted to like build on
Editor
Bubble and like,
performance. Talk about that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That didn't come up. I was
Yeah.
really surprised.
They must not have been bubblers.
They're
Well,
all waiting you for next week.
yeah,
They're gonna ask
yeah,
all
yeah,
those
exactly.
questions. Yeah.
Yeah, but it felt
That'll be.
like it didn't feel like necessarily no coders was the main audience at the conference. Of course, I didn't meet everybody, but it
Yeah,
felt like more like
corporate.
businesses, corporate a little
Interesting.
bit
Yeah,
corporate. Yeah.
what you're saying makes it feel like a lot of big corporates understanding there is a movement happening, going to put their foot in the water to see if
Hmm.
this is real or not.
Yeah. Yeah. That is what it felt like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you think about like having success stories on stage, it's so that you can tell the business owners, hey, it's possible. Like
Hmm.
you can do this on
Hmm.
no code. Although the app didn't really help prove that case.
Yeah.
What would you change, and what do you hope for next? Like not the change.
Yeah. What would I change? I'm not sure I would change anything. I mean, the app, that. I think this might have been a thing that I just wasn't aware of. But I've been to a few conferences where there's a lot of like attendee led sessions, and I always think those are some of the most valuable interactions. And I don't think that was a thing. It was like sessions you had to like, but then James Davenport and Kieran were doing a session, and Max Haining from
Yeah.
100 Days of No Code, that they ended up pulling me into, that was about like making a living with no code. So I'm pretty sure they submitted that talk, if
Hmm.
that makes sense. And I don't know how that happened, but I like the sort of casual, like we're doing a meetup of bubble devs over here. And we're doing
Yeah.
you had to like organically find people. I mean, you could find them in the app, but again, the app kind of
Yeah.
sucked, right?
Didn't really.
Yeah, I mean, sort of what I ended up doing was it was overwhelming. I walked in and I was like, "Oh my god, there's so many people and I don't know anybody." And I'm just, I was like, "This is a big mistake." And so I went and I just sat on a couch and was like trying to work, and bubblers just found me because I have like a
Oh, your
bubble.
editor open, and they're like, ah, look,
Well,
a bubbler.
I have a little bubble sticker on my
Oh yeah.
laptop, and
Nice.
I think I'm fairly recognizable,
Yeah.
I suppose. So we ended up with just like a little crew of bubblers, but I know there were tons of bubblers there because there
Yeah.
was a Flusk session, a couple of
Yeah.
Flusk sessions about security, and the rooms were full, 100
That's awesome.
people. Yeah. So I wish there had been some more like structured ways to find your people. You
If
know?
if I was the conference organizer,
Mhm.
I would. Did you have lanyards?
Yep. Okay. This is another. We had lanyards, but you had to print your name tag and bring it with
Oh,
you
what?
or stand in a long ass line for them
Okay.
to print
No
it.
thanks.
And then it was a piece of paper you had to fold up, somehow poke a hole in to stick it on your it was so bad. Didn't
Okay.
Oh,
count.
Well, I was gonna suggest a name tag, and on the name tag, you would put your tech stack. Oh, I use Bubble and Softr, and so
Yeah.
when you
it's a
meet
great
someone, you're
idea.
like, "Oh, you're a Bubble dev.
Yeah,
Great.
Yeah,
Talk to you about editor stuff."
yeah.
right.
And then you kind of like have, or you can like pick a lanyard color. Oh, blue for
Ah,
Bubble, black for
That's
Softr.
I love
very
it.
good.
That like you don't have to get so close to know you. Like you don't want to be approaching a conversation saying, "I don't want to talk," to you," and then like,
Yeah.
like, "Sorry, you don't do Bubble. I don't care."
All right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right? You don't want that, right? You want a natural conversation
Mhm.
that's like useful to approach from before. Like I'll pull a lot from websites. They have really awesome badges that are actually have RFID chips in them that connect with their app, so you can see
Wow.
who's talking to one another,
What?
and then you interact like who's looking for what, and there's lots of information. Oh, and they're much shorter, so I don't have to look at your
I
stomach too.
saw
Ah,
Right? They're like up here, and you're like, oh, I can like see you and
yeah,
your face, and not
so
have
smart.
to get the awkward. What's your name again?
a great
Lance.
user experience.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like weird. The name tag. There's like a science to it for sure. Name tag
Yeah.
operation. Definitely
What
don't print it yourself.
Oh,
yeah.
come
Yeah.
on.
What I really wanna know is, like, which lines were the longest? Like, you have all these no-code tools and everything. Where
The
do you think
bathroom line.
where do you think the
Yeah.
most buzz was at in terms of these tools?
Are you talking about like for sessions? Like,
Yeah, like, generally the buzz, like, who was the company, the tool that had the
mm,
buzz there, and then who was the company that didn't quite have the buzz there?
I don't know that I can answer that because the thing is, like, I ended up not going to that many sessions.
Okay.
I ended up just like hanging out with the guys. And
Yeah.
so, which,
That's what you do.
worked for me. But yeah, but I will say that, and I only went to bubble sessions. I wasn't
Yeah,
really trying to go to the other sessions, but the bubble ones like did have lines. They were full. They were
that's
packed.
right.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think, Bubble is just sort of like the monster of the space. And so it made
Yeah.
sense. And a lot of people were, kicking the tires a little bit. And I think the sessions that they had for Bubble stuff were really good. They were
Oh,
really
good,
good.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. The Fluss guys, man, those guys are very good presenters.
That's
Their
awesome.
their
They
stuff
also
was
have, like
tight.
a little fear mongering in there, right? Like they talk about a very serious topic, and
Yeah,
so
but they're
like
very
you're like
they're
I'm
young
sitting like,
they're
oh
young
my,
and they're
what did
very
I do?
kind. You know, I had the honor to work with them for my security course. We worked together and built that curriculum together, and they're really smart young guys with just a
So
great
smart.
open heart. Yeah.
Yeah, very sweet. And like I did not realize I don't want to be like an ageist at all. They're young.
Yes,
These
they're
guys are
22.
young.
Yeah, they're young.
Shut up. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
But they are
22.
very smart. I mean, they won the
Very smart.
Trailblazer Award for Bubble last year, right? They have Flush Security. It's a program that kinda unlocks Bubble and shows you vulnerabilities and how to fix it,
Mhm.
and that's kinda
Unlocks because of the security holes. Yes.
yeah, well, so it doesn't unlock, but it accesses security holes if there are any, shows you where they are and how you can patch
Yeah.
it, right? Which is a lot of what my security course did as well. This is kind of the software behind it. But yeah, I think they're doing great
They're
things.
legit. These
They are
guys are
legit.
legit. Yep.
What about WeWeb? I heard the lines were really long at the WeWeb booth.
I don't know. I
No?
didn't even
Okay.
here's the thing is like, okay, so all the sessions were like on the outside and
Yeah.
you have to go into the booths and they're crowded. And so I just kind of avoided them because I was like,
Yeah.
I can't get through this mess. So I forgot to go to the bubble desk and there's like people I know from working with Bubble that like I missed until I happened to walk by
Yeah.
Teo on the way to the after party. And he's like, Carrie, I totally missed going to the booth. So yeah, I don't know. I failed you on that one. Sorry.
Okay.
It's
All good.
interesting. Like I understand if the main audience of the conference are businesses, then I understand why the booths are the platforms. But I feel like it's really hard to recruit a new developer to come try a platform that hasn't already done the research on their own, or is like, oh, because the people standing there are so nice, I'm going to learn softer now. Like,
Yeah.
unless you have a question about a tool you're using, you're probably not, or you want FaceTime. So they give you, I don't know, like a call. I don't know.
I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't
there
know
aren't
really the
many
point of
like
that.
auxiliary apps. I think Clue was there, maybe Flusk was there. Like these are
Mhm,
apps for bubble devs to
mhm,
Mhm.
use. That
mhm.
I understand as like a great reason to have a booth there.
Yeah.
So it was a success. It was a good event, organized, well attended. The
Mhm.
app could have been better. Hopefully, will
Yep.
next year. Bubble still seems like the king of the arena for now. In terms of that, at least what you saw from
Mhm.
that kind of perspective. Is it worth going for next year?
I'm gonna go. I'm definitely gonna go. I don't know if it's worth I am in Barcelona, so for me, it was just like a quick little hop over there.
Yeah,
I think if you're trying to meet bubblers, you wanna, like, meet bubblers, great
yeah,
place to be. I mean, obviously, BubbleCon is gonna be, like,
yeah,
really the place for that.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm not sure I would fly overseas for it,
Okay.
to be honest, but
Well,
now
that
that
makes
I
me feel better.
yeah, no, you shouldn't have a ton of FOMO. I think you're fine. I think
Okay.
you're fine, JJ.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to BubbleCon next week. The schedule isn't too full, but I think that leaves time for us to just get to know each other even more.
Yeah. I was a little like, when I saw the schedule. I wanted more.
Community events.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted
This is
more.
just the first one.
Yeah.
I may or may not agree with your point of view, but it's year one. They're gonna let it be organic,
Mhm.
something, yada
There'll be
yada
lots
yada.
of drinks to be had, I'm
Hoorah,
sure of that.
cheerleader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say I taught the Immerse program, Bubbles,
Oh,
Immerse
cool.
program. Yeah, and, it was so fun, and I was talking to one of the founders in the program, and she was telling me about, like, her experience with they do their demo day. They're going to do their demo day at
Yeah.
BubbleCon. She's like, "Man, it is tight." Like, they are on top of stuff, like, getting so I think and I think partly that's Nicole who runs that program is just she's very good at running programs and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think they're really on top of this conference. I think they're taking it really seriously, and I think that they're gonna produce it as well as they can. I don't know that they're engaging any kind of external, like, event planning thing,
Yeah.
but I don't think they're just throwing it together. I think they're being really intentional about it. So,
I would agree with that for sure, and that's probably why less is more maybe in this
yeah.
area of, like, there's just not too much be just yeah, and I think it comes at an interesting time in the no-code industry with a lot of powerhouses kind of entering and now having these conferences and seeing what is to come
Mhm.
and the more seasoned professionals like us of like, do you still have our confidence or not? And I think this can play a lot into that. So I think there's a lot on the line here.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I would definitely agree where this bubble feels like it's kind of teetering a little bit and it could go
Yeah.
one way or the other. And I think that they're aware of that. That's
Yeah.
my
I hope
sense.
so, because everyone I talk to says kind of the same thing.
Mm.
Well, yeah, it's okay.
Let's see what the
I'll
future holds.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely like a bubble. Like I am very like loyal to bubble.
Me too.
Um, but also like I'm interested in seeing what other tools
Sure.
have to offer and what's their staying power and like what are they going to be better at or yeah,
Yeah, we're
we'll
lucky
see.
that there are so many now. 3, 4, 5 years ago, Bubble was it,
Yeah.
right? And they still are great in so many ways, but depending on your use case, depending on your business,
Mhm,
there's a tool for that now,
mhm.
right? And they're really good, and they're
Yeah.
moving really quickly, and so it's good for us, bad for them, and I think
Mhm.
you combine the whole AI on top of it, so you can learn things much faster and move much faster, and then it just makes this whole industry crazy.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, I think that I think all of these companies will niche in some way. Flutterflow will be the native app
Yeah.
guys and I don't
Maybe
know what
some
bubble.
acquisitions, some merges, maybe?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah,
Yeah.
who knows?
Well, Kelly, as always, it is
yeah.
wonderful speking to you. We
What a
will look to
pleasure.
have you on again at some point, but at the very least, I will see you next week. Thank you for coming on today. We
Of
really
course.
Tell us
appreciate you.
what you have going on, how to reach you.
Yeah, Twitter. I mean, Twitter's the way. As I said, I'm on the freelance market. If y'all
There
need
you
a
go.
developer or a
Yep.
designer,
A
hit me up.
badass developer designer. We will put your stuff in the credits of this podcast. We will send it to you when it's live on all platforms.
All
All
right,
right.
guys.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thanks.
we'll see ya.
See ya.
See ya.
It's always a pleasure talking to Kelly. We have been bubbling alongside of her for a couple of years now, and she's
Yeah.
always just a joy. She's a great person and does great work. So glad to
Yeah.
have her on the pod.
Yep. Absolutely. Always a smile, always a laugh. It's great.
Yeah. Maybe one day we could bring her into the studio to do some work with us. But until that day, we have one more new segment that we want to get into, which is the acquisition of We Love No Code being acquired by TopTail. So We Love No Code, it's a hiring marketplace for no code devs. I think they had around 40,000 members, something like that.
Like really high number of no coders. Yeah.
Yeah, in all different languages, and they did a whole bunch of stuff, right? And maybe one day we can have the CEO Nick on to talk about that. But until then, the way that I saw it is companies can go to them and they would be matched with experts in that field. And We Love No Code would be like a hands-on PM sometimes in that
Mhm.
way, or it could be hands-off. And what I saw We Love No Code as is like it was one of the first no code companies to like raise millions of like venture dollars, right? He's a Teal fellow. So Peter Thiel invested in him at some point, and they went on to raise from institutional investors in the Valley to build this company. And at one point, they like had a big team there, right?
Yeah.
And they built some great processes, like some of the SEO, like they have a bunch of like how-to things, tool guides, all this kind of stuff leads to about 15,000 monthly organic traffic. And so they really had like this
Mhm.
industry going in that way for a lot of no code devs looking for hire. I personally never went there because I never needed to. So I feel like, were you out on there ever?
I never used the platform
Yeah,
like this. Yeah. But
yeah,
I've
and
used TopTal. Yeah.
yeah. I actually I don't know anyone that has, but what that might tell me is that the top end premier devs might not have been there, but the entry level intermediate devs were there trying to find work, and most likely they had a good amount of revenue, so they were making matches, right?
Yeah.
And long story short, they ended up just selling to TopTail. So that tells us that TopTail is entering the no code industry, the talent
Mhm.
part of that. And
Yeah.
what does that mean? What do you think this means for TopTail entering the no code industry now on the talent side?
Yeah. I think this is really a great time to be in the no code space. No code covers more than just MVPs and initial prototypes. It's also a lot of business automation. And, as we keep hearing over and over, starting with the interview with Doc, automation is taking over a lot, and internal apps are taking over a lot of businesses. And so when you think about TopTal's main customer segment, they are technical teams at large companies, mid-sized companies, maybe some startups as well. That's how I've used them. They are trying to take over more and more of that tech and IT department for these companies, right? And so maybe they're going to use a bubble, but maybe also they're using Make or
Mhm.
Glide or Zapier, right? And they're just knowing all of these things and having access to that talent is a pool of talent that I'm sure We Love No Code spent maybe millions of dollars acquiring over time, that they just now have this pool of people. They know their expertise, they know what tech stack they use, they know, they have portfolios, and now they just go attach this automation no code world into their existing sales structure. I think it's really cool because we've talked about this some maybe on camera, maybe not. Where are all of the bubble jobs, the high paying bubble jobs?
Yeah.
And TopTal is a more premier marketplace
Yeah.
for projects, right? And so if they're selling, big ticket projects in the no code space, that helps raise the bar of price for what a normal job might be. And so this could mean a general expansion of the no code market, raising of prices of the average talent. Um,
I
but we'll
think it
see.
also
Yeah.
I think it also means that like the demand for automation and internal tools is there, and they recognize it. Like that's where I would think about this. Like I don't think they're going to replace their software devs with bubble
Mhm.
devs yet. I think they're seeing a huge need for internal tools, internal
Yeah.
operations, operating systems, Coda, Notion, all these things to get in there and help these companies from the internal side and
Yeah.
staff that. I think that's kind of where they might see it. Maybe we can get someone on from TopTail to talk about it more.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be exciting? Yeah, so we could
Yeah.
try for that. But either way, I love it. A validated player buys a no code company, and is now entering this space to validate it even further. So I think that's great. It's coming at the enterprise level, that premier level that you're talking about. So I'm really excited for it. And one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk about it today is because I think it just goes to show that we're getting there. Kelly
Mhm.
talked about the No Coast conference that there's a lot of corporate people dipping their toes in the water, thinking, is this ready for enterprise yet? Is this ready for enterprise yet? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people are like ready to pull that trigger. Like, if so,
Mhm.
let's get going. But I think it's just right on that line, right? And it's
Yeah.
happening. Might not be happening as fast as everyone might want it to be, but it's happening, and I think it's really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great overall. Very happy for them. Always nice to see a friendly face get a win. Would love to have him on. Maybe we can get Nick and someone from TopTel together,
Yeah,
walking through that. I'm sure a lot of people would love to hear about the acquisition process, being internal champions, the whole thing.
yeah,
Would love to have them on. Maybe we can do
yeah.
that
And someday we're gonna have to talk to you about your acquisition process as well, Mr. Big
someday.
Shot. Yeah.
Someday.
Yeah. But until then, let's get into the community segments and or just final thoughts before we wrap this up. So, of course, next week is BubbleCon. I will be there. Our producer Harrison will be there, and a bunch of other bubblers. If you are going, please let us know so we can meet up and get to know each other. DM us, respond to the comments, anything. Let us know. We have an internal WeChat application, like a group chat going for all the BubbleCon attendees. Hit me up. We can add you to that so we can stay in touch. Also, if you want the leave behind of the Bubble Xano performance guide that we did last year, also email us or do anything, contact us, let us know. I can send it your way. And then finally, if you haven't left us a review yet, Apple Podcasts, please do, because it goes a long way to helping more people find this show, or share this show with your friends. The more success we have with the show, the more that we could do for you and bring to you. So help us help you. But anyways, I hope you enjoy this episode. Another week of This Week in No Code with David Pal and myself, JJ Engler, signing off for This Week in No Code.
See you next week in No Code.
See you next week in No Code.